Hey everyone, this is Shpan, and today I thought it'd be fun to talk about a few game design elements in Daggerfall that I feel are really underappreciated. And I'd love to see more modern RPGs try to include similar ideas, as I think they'd be really popular even among the modern gaming audience that might not be used to older RPG designs like Daggerfall. But before we get started, if you enjoy Daggerfall content like this, please consider subscribing to my channel or to my Patreon through the link in the video description below. And with that out of the way, let's look at 5 underappreciated ideas in Daggerfall. If you haven't experienced clothing in Daggerfall, you might be wondering what the big deal is and why it's on this list. It might at first glance just seem like essentially more armor slots, but in reality, it plays out very differently. Having a whole set of potential clothing underneath your armor is awesome for a number of reasons. When you come back from dungeon delving and arrive in town, it's nice to head on over to the blacksmith, hand over all of your armor for repairs, which can take a few days in Daggerfall, and in that time waiting for repairs, you spend that downtime in your regular clothes going about your business in towns as a regular person. It adds a nice role-playing element to your character because in these moments, you are taking a break from being an adventurer. The downtime allows you to explore and engage with different guilds, NPCs, shops, banks, and nobles. If you build a character that is forbidden from wearing any type of armor, then you would still have access to clothing. We see this in the pre-made monk class in Daggerfall. They're forbidden from leather, chain, and plate armor, that's every type of armor in the game, and in most games that would result in a character that can't wear anything. But because Daggerfall has a ton of awesome clothing options, you can still create some cool clothing sets for your monk character, or whoever you're role-playing as that doesn't wear armor. Furthermore, clothing can actually have enchantments on them, so it also provides some interesting and practical itemization options and the excitement of finding upgrades, even for characters that don't or can't wear armor. Clothing can also be worn underneath our armor, or in place of some armor slots as well, and really allows the player to build all sorts of different visual armor sets for their character. It's a lot of fun to shop around and build a unique set of equipment that resonates with the class or character that you're playing. Language skills have been one of my favorite ideas from Daggerfall, and something I'm always advocating for in other games to include. It's such a fun idea, and can actually be very strong if focused on. I use the Language Skills Overhaul mod, which really expands on the original idea and creates a lot of interesting new options and a new way of interacting with enemies, but even without any mods, this idea by Bethesda was really amazing in my opinion. Language skills give you a chance to pacify enemies in dungeons if the specific language skill check coincides with the language group for that enemy. So for example, the language skill Orcish gives you a chance to pacify any orc enemy, be it a regular orc or an orc warlord, and after becoming pacified, the enemy will stop moving and no longer attack you. A pacified enemy will still fight other enemies that don't belong to their enemy group, assuming you are using that option in the Daggerfall Unity settings. Being able to master the language skills that relate to specific enemy groups has so much potential role-playing flavor. You could be a ranger that is friendly with centaurs or other creatures that are harmonious with nature, or you could have some affiliation with a Daedric and convince Daedra lords to lay down their arms against you and allow you safe passage. There's a ton of different language skills and so a ton of different ways you can incorporate these ideas into your role playing, and it's both a lot of fun and deceivingly powerful in the right situations. In a lot of games, opening locked doors or chests is reserved for thief-like classes. You are usually allowed a few attempts to unlock a locked door, or unlimited attempts with a resource tied to it, like lockpicks in Skyrim for example. And in Skyrim, it can sometimes break my immersion when every character I play needs to develop their skill at lockpicking, even when it doesn't fit the role-playing vibe or class fantasy that I'm going for. In Daggerfall, this isn't a problem, because anyone that isn't skilled at lockpicking can simply use their weapons or their fists and feet to break down a locked door. You could also use a spell that unlocks doors, which is a nice touch for spellcasting builds, but for everyone else, in most RPGs, there isn't any other options. But there is still a slight trade-off. If you are using your weapon to break down a door, it will degrade the durability of that weapon, so using your fists or feet is usually the best way to go about it. It's simply a nice touch to be given a third option when most other RPGs give you one or two ways to deal with locked doors. I know it's a small thing, but it seems like something that a lot of gamers want because you'll notice in plenty of other games like Skyrim or even Dragon Age Origins that mods were created to allow players to bash open locks. Depending on your preference, this could actually be seen as a negative or positive for you, I guess. But for me, I like that Daggerfall has extremely massive dungeons that you can get lost in. And there's a couple of reasons why. One is that you get a real sense of danger and risk management when dungeon delving in Daggerfall. It's not some tiny cave like you might see in Skyrim that loops around and gives you easy access to the exit upon completion. In Daggerfall, you might enter a teleporting door, or fall down an elevator shaft that you can't find the switch for, or even fall into a lower section of water, trapping yourself deep into a dungeon and needing to explore to escape. It's fun for me because dungeon delving becomes focused on risk assessment. The further you go, the more potential loot you can find as upgrades for your build or to sell to shops, but you take on a higher risk of getting lost, becoming poisoned or diseased, or simply dying in combat to an enemy. The dungeon design philosophy in Daggerfall is just very different from most other RPGs. Sometimes you'll enter a dungeon that your class is not built well to explore. For example, there could be a bunch of underwater sections and routes within the dungeon, and your character might be weak at swimming or not have access to a spell like water breathing. Or there might be a dungeon that has more meta reasons for being difficult for you. Rather than it conflicting with build choices for your character, it might instead be a dungeon that includes a bunch of levers and switches that don't clearly explain what's happening when you activate them, and so for you personally, it's very difficult to navigate. You might enter a dungeon like that, see 5 switches that affect something not in your immediate vicinity, and be like, nope, I don't even want to bother with this, and leave. In Daggerfall, it's totally normal to only explore a little bit of a dungeon and leave without seeing the entirety of it, because they are so large, so maze-like, and depending on the dungeon interior components can be extremely dangerous for your build. And that'll do it. 5 unique gameplay elements in Daggerfall that I feel are really underappreciated, and I'd love to see more modern RPGs try similar ideas. I think they'd be popular and receive well by audiences today. If there are any other things about Daggerfall that you feel are underappreciated that I missed, definitely let me know in the comments. Thanks for watching, and I hope I'll see you in the next one. Take care, everyone.